Hey, this is Jared Krause, host of the Buying Online Businesses podcast. And in this episode, I get to speak to Mr. Charley Valher from Outsourcing Angels again, who has been crushing it online through many of his businesses, scaling them and killing it. And we talked about something really, really important, which is how to identify the value that you can add to a website business before buying it. And throughout this episode, we dive deep into, learning about how to squeeze as much as you can out of the low-hanging fruit, how to, add value through different types of SEO, different types of marketing, different ways that you can look at the competition and see what they're doing and apply that to businesses that you end up going to buy, so you can add so much more value, not just to the business for yourself, but to the end user, which is ultimately the most important. So such a valuable episode. If you guys are looking to buy online businesses, buy websites, already making passive income and grow them even more, this is certainly an episode you don't want to miss. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Buying Online Businesses podcast. And again, I am very grateful and very lucky to talk to Mr. Charley Valher from Outsourcing Angels, who has been jumping on board and speaking with me quite regularly now on the podcast. And we get to talk today, Charley, about our favorite subject, buying websites and actually growing websites. In this topic, we're going to talk about how to identify value you can add to websites before buying them. So Charley, welcome back on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Jared. I really look forward to these episodes. And this topic, I'm going to put it out there. I think this is probably one of the most important skills you can form when it comes to buying websites or buying online businesses. Because if you can know where you're going to apply value, I think you can often succeed really, really well. Like it's just, it can make such a difference versus buying a site and then not being sure how to grow it or what things to add to it can be very frustrating.
I certainly agree. And for everybody listening, just to let you know, when I first started looking at buying websites, I wasn't completely well versed on a bazillion different ways to identify value and, knowing how to grow a website before I actually bought it. So if you're in that same position, that's totally fine. You will start learning a lot about how to add value to websites before, or knowing how to grow websites before you buy them. And you're going to learn a lot from this actual episode, aren't they, Charley?
I think so. I think we're pretty well prepared for this one.
For sure. And so, Charley, I've got a couple of examples of different ways that I have known how to add value to websites before buying them and gone away and implemented those. A lot of my clients have done the same in different strategies and how to grow their businesses. But I wanted to ask you first and foremost, Charley, what is a way that you have identified value before buying a website business? And how do you think it's relevant, or how do you think it's important for people to look at that way to add value to the business that you did when they're looking at buying their first or second or third website business?
Great question, Jared. Really good question. I'm going to ask that question back to you in a moment.
Perfect.
Because I think it's so interesting. I'm very interested in your perspective. For me personally, I'm going to recognize very quickly that for whatever reason, I thought I was a bit of a pioneer when it came to this game. So what I used to do, and very wrongly, I'm going to say straight up, like this did not work for me at all, is like I used to almost like look at a business and then even potentially buy it, or I'd start it, depending on what I was doing at the time, and like feel like I needed to reinvent the wheel. I needed to pioneer some new thing or new technology or new way of doing business because whatever already existed in the marketplace was already done. So I had this habit. It was really interesting. It was like I was almost like a futurist, but not really.
It's isn't it crazy? I mean, I'm very similar as well, Charley, and I just thought I need to go away and do something totally different. And a lot of people believe, we have to have this $1 million idea, but it's not really the case of what is needed in in the world. Like, we don't just need brand new things or new inventions or whatever. We just need to solve problems better, and we can do that through existing businesses, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That's already been done in different industries, and we can just apply them into these ones that we're looking at getting into.
I couldn't agree more. And I love this saying to kind of go with it, is that pioneering doesn't pay.
Wow, I've never heard that one.
A mentor gave me that very early on. He said that, and then he said another thing after it, which is a little bit controversial, but he always used to say as well, he's like, good artists copy, great artists steal, and idiots reinvent the wheel.
I love it, because I have one of the lessons that I teach in my community is good artists copy, great artists steal. And the one about idiots reinvent the wheel is a great one. I should add that to the title.
I thought it was really clever, but this kind of, I know I'm veering, but I want to come back on track here. And I think that one of the most powerful things you can do to identify areas you can add value is when you look at a business you're potentially going to buy, is flat out just comparing it to the bigger players that are in a similar or the same niche or similar niche doing something similar. So if you can look at a business that's smaller than the biggest in the market, right, and you can see the big players are all doing a certain type of thing, often they leave little clues about what you should be focusing on or areas you should be investing into, because that's where they're spending their money. So my first piece of advice here, and what I really look at when the potential areas to add value, is see where your competition is spending money. What is your competition investing time and resources into?
That's a really, really good one. And that's definitely not something that I first learned or I first went to do. And so for an example, do you have an example of that, Charlie? Like how that would work?
Yeah, so I actually did this more recently, because like I've recently purchased a site. So I was looking at a site in the health and wellness space, and I thought, I'm looking at this business, I'm going through things, and I was like, what's next? And I go, well, you need to start looking at like who the competition is. Now, one of the biggest players in this space is Mind Body Green. They're a huge business in the US doing some very, very similar stuff. Little bit different, but they're close enough for this example. And when I looked at what they were doing, I'd noticed where they'd spent their money. Like, what are they spending their money on? And it was really obvious to me how much they were spending on like influencers and their own information products and courses. They were two areas I noticed that they were putting quite a lot of effort into. And I could see that in the business I was looking at, this wasn't a place where they had been putting a lot of effort into. So to do better and see, we're going, okay, well, what type of influencers are they using? What type of courses are they making? Like, it actually gave me a lot of insights into where the future of this industry is going. And by taking some of that knowledge, it kind of set a path of what I was going to be putting, or I suppose, adding value in, or how to identify the value I wanted to add to the current business.
That's so cool. So that's just sort of, great artists copy, good artists copy, great artists steal. So you're just becoming a great artist and seeing what they're doing and implementing it into the business that you've bought. And then that can blossom off in its own direction. And that's pretty much the way I see it, is what you're doing is you're helping solve bigger or more problems for more people, which when you do so, that adds more value to their lives, which adds more value to your business, right?
Absolutely. But I just want to make one thing clear here. I'm not copying them exactly. So it's like, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's like, let's pretend that Mind Body Green had an iPhone course. I'm just making this up because my iPhone's in front of me. Then I was going to make an iPhone course and aim to like copy it direct. It's not that specific. It's like you're looking for the macros, you're looking at, the major factors, and then you put your own flavor and twist on it. Just a little bit though. Nothing too crazy.
Yeah, and for everybody listening, we're not, condoning go away and steal people's content and stuff like that. Like, the way I see it, Charlie, is you're looking at some of the strategies and plays they're using and how can you sort of like leverage off some of those ideas, and don't have to do exactly the same sort of plays, but like use some of what you've learned from what they're doing. Is that right?
Absolutely. The brushstrokes, not the absolute down to the granular copying.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was definitely something I think is really important from value identification. So what about you, Jared? What was first on your list?
So the first thing, I'll give you a bit of a story on how I added value to my second business. So I bought this business and it did tremendously well as soon as I started making these changes. And I wanted to just not, if I'm going to be honest, I didn't want to add more value to the business. And yeah, of course I wanted to grow it, but I really wanted to make my life easier in running the business and cutting the expenses out. So what was being done was human beings manually processing orders. And it was my suit business. And I thought that's just old and clunky, and I need to work out how I can get some sort of automation happening, some sort of tool. So I got a tool created. It wasn't the cheapest tool to get created. It was a custom tool that could allow people to, do their order online, and then it would get sent straight to the tailor rather than having to pass through multiple hands and have to pay each hand that it went through as well. And since doing that, I added so much value to myself, not as the business owner, but it allowed people who wanted to just quickly go away and order their suits, do that, with a few clicks of a button, rather than having to go through multiple emails and backwards and forwards and all that sort of stuff. And that was one way that would just made the process so much better for the end user. And I see that there's so many ways you can do that with businesses, and it's not that, automation is the only way to go about it in, artificial intelligence, but there's different ways you can simplify businesses. And I was speaking to Richard Patey from Website Flipping, and what he does is when he buys a website, is he removes things out of the SEO, like out of the website, that makes the website run slower and boosts its SEO. He doesn't do a whole lot of things to change everything. He just removes some things and some pieces to simplify it, and he calls it pruning. And I just thought that was a really good way to not push to add value in, but remove things that could add value.
I love that answer so much. I really, really do, because I'm going to put it out there. I've never seen a business that was truly running lean. Like, there's always wasted resource. And honestly, I reckon there's a business out there for someone who's just really good at removing the crap. I really do.
Yeah, just making it so much more lean, and there's so many every bit, like you said, you don't know too many businesses itself that are running super lean. It's just, how can you apply some minimalist things that you may pick up in your lifestyle to a website?
Well, particularly online, I feel like this is even more true, because I'm confident right now there's businesses out there that are using tools they don't need, or paying more for tools that they don't need, or blowing out expenses, in your case here, by doing things manually that could be done through a tool, or maybe a better process, or maybe it could be done by another company like a BPO or something. So it doesn't need to be done in-house at all.
Yeah. And I actually had this conversation with two of my friends this morning, Charlie. We always have a call. They're business owners, online business owners as well. We learn so much from each other. And one of them is just cutting down expenses and going lean and changing platforms. And we're thinking about their businesses, like getting off, spending so much on ads and putting it towards something else, and also removing themselves from ClickFunnels and paying another service, which is a little bit more lean and way easier to use. And there's so many things you can do to save money and make your website or the buying process for the user better as well. Remove so many steps that just aren't necessary or clunky and slow slow to help people get through the checkout phase and find the products they want. Like, for example, there's some of the people in my community, they go, oh, what should I do when I buy the business? Like if it's a drop shipping store or, a product sort of e-commerce site, do I just add more products every now and then? I'm like, no, like hell no. Like, why don't you just remove the products that aren't selling so much and have like just a couple of the best products that do sell really, really well and have just a few of them on your website rather than having like hundreds or thousands of products on there, which gives people's buyer's fatigue and makes them run away because they can't find what they actually want.
The overwhelm.
Right? And so that's another way you can add value is just by removing products that are just taking up space, not just on your website, but they're in the way, they're objects in the way of getting people to what they really want. So just give them a couple of things of what they really want and make it easy.
I agree. I really like this answer a lot. Actually, I think it's far better than my answer. So well done, Jared. I wish I said that.
Thank you. So I know that you're really good, Charley, at growing and scaling businesses. And so say you were to take over a website, what would be one thing that you could do to scale it that was on the opposite side of going lean?
Well, I think we have to realize that while I'll accept one of the best things you can do initially is just trim out the fat. Okay, so like you're talking from there is like, let's remove waste, and that can be a great way to get a gain. The reality is you can only remove so much. Like you can only cut your expenses to a point, but growth can be endless in a lot of cases. So I think growth is still a very important side of the equation. But what I tend to think about is, my first answer was, look at people within your niche. Look at people that you could consider competitors or very similar to your business. And you can often learn a lot by what your competition is doing. But I read a fantastic book by a guy called Jay Abraham called Getting the Most Out of All You've Got. And one of the things he references in the book is looking at completely different industries to see how they're doing things and picking up ideas that aren't common in your niche because they can be your strategic or unfair advantage. And I found this to be really, really true for myself. And we've started to see this like in a grand scale of things just to become everywhere. So I'll give you an example, is that the whole way Shopify sites work and where the buttons are and everything like that is actually modeled off Amazon. And then we see that type of thing is then modeled into other e-commerce stores. And now pretty much every e-commerce platform kind of borrows that idea and methodology. So looking at like the titans of industry and how they're going about things, or how successful businesses that are a similar business model but in a completely different area, I think often present things that can be really, really useful to identifying where you can add value in a business.
So good, Charley, because now that you've identified that, I look at a lot of the mentors that I've had and they've given me some great tools in marketing that has been used for many of the other industries that they've worked in, but it works really, really well. And applying that to one of my businesses has worked tremendously well as well. And it's a great way to, what you're doing is you just, the same as what you said at the start, is going away and finding out what works and what doesn't work and applying. And I think that's like the most important thing is just, if it's working somewhere else, why can't it work for you? Right?
Exactly. I mean, this was probably a little bit more risky because maybe the reason it doesn't exist in your niche is because it doesn't work in your niche. And there's some things that don't translate well. But in general, I think it's very, very true that you can learn a lot from different industries. And often, like, for myself, it's I've noticed it's very, very easy to kind of end up, just stuck in your own universe, hanging out with the same people, seeing the same ideas, all similar businesses do similar things. But then there's all these universes out there. There's all these ecosystems and different things all having that same effect. And we all have ideas that would cross-pollinate really well if we were taking the time to understand them.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. And there was one thing that came up when you were talking about that, and that is one of my clients, and I've noticed that there's so many ways you can do this, is one of my clients has seen that there's they bought a business, right? And he's done really, really well with this business. And there's been so many it was a dropshipping business, and there's been so many businesses that have moved from order fulfillment into dropshipping, or dropshipping into order fulfillment, vice versa. And it depends on what industry you're in. However, he went away and did some calculations and worked out that the value that he could add to the business was changing his business, which was order fulfillment. So they'd buy a whole bunch of bulk and then send it to an order fulfillment agency, which most of you guys probably know as FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon. And then once those orders get put in, they get sent to FBA or the order fulfillment agency, and they get sent out to the end user, the client, customer. And instead of that's really cool or good said and well, but what you got to do is you got to spend a lot of money in bulk to buy those products, and then you got to pay per item usually for the order fulfillment agency. Whereas he could save and slash a whole lot of money out of that process if he just asked the suppliers to dropship for him. And that's what he did, and he added so much more value to the business because he could make things so much more simpler rather than having to do an immense amount of work just to get his products to the end user. And I thought that was a really, really good way to add value, is changing the way the business makes money by not having to use the same business model, or adding a little business model in. Like from other industries that I've seen, is there's some great affiliate websites that do really, really well and make great affiliate commissions by sending people to Amazon and other different affiliate programs. Although they're also leaving some money on the table there, Charlie, by not adding specific advertisements on to their website, which would be specific to the niche of the traffic that are viewing that website. And I feel that that's a really good way to add value too.
I agree. I definitely agree on that one.
Yeah. And so, Charlie, I wanted to ask you another one. Say, because you've got a lot of experience in marketing, right? Say you were to look at a website and you wanted to buy it, but you want to identify some ways you could change the marketing or add value to it through marketing. What would be your go-to by identifying the marketing and some of the things that you could do for some quick wins, should I say?
Great question. I think marketing's such an important topic. It really, really is. And you can optimize a business in a lot of other areas, but if you're looking to grow, marketing certainly is a factor. I've got like a little hit list I look at that I think is really important when it comes to like the easy wins when it comes to marketing. I'm going to go through these reasonably quickly here.
Cool.
So number one is page speed. Faster sites convert better. And more often than not, if you want to have a faster website, it's simply a matter of upgrading your hosting. So this is something that could take you an hour and potentially get you an increased conversion rate on your site right away. So super low hanging fruit, super easy. Now, in some cases, this can be more complex. You might need works done to your site or re-optimize or whatnot. Even then, never has this proven to be a bad investment for me. Like ease of work versus return, definitely there. The next one is that the world has gone mobile. And I can't believe I'm even saying this because it's like, how long have we had iPhones for now? 10 years?
I think I got my first iPhone in like 2011 maybe. So 10 years pretty much. Close
Right.
to.
So the web industry is still lagging a little bit, but I still find so many websites or online businesses are only really optimized for desktop. Like in a lot of cases, a better mobile experience would drastically improve conversions and also just like overall everything. So whether it's SEO, whether it's, as I said, on-site conversion, whether it's getting people to consume content, UX, like it just so many home runs. And still to this day, drastically ignored. And I'm going to go extreme and say that like mobile first.
I actually don't think that's extreme, to be honest. I think that's imperative.
All right. Well, it's less extreme these days. Well, I'm glad you're on board.
Well, it's just, how could you, like all the data points towards more people, using the internet on their phone. Like, I dare say a lot of people aren't even going to have desktops in 5-10 years, Charlie. Unless
you're doing something that requires the screen capital. I completely agree. And with how fast phones are getting, soon enough, you'll be able to just plug a monitor into your phone. And that is your computer.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I think that's coming. Anyway, not to get too futuristic, but like that is a must. Like that's a huge win you can have more often than not.
For sure.
The next one is that I thought it was really funny. A guy called Peep Leisure from Conversion XL used to always make this joke that like no one reads. That was his whole thing. Like he doesn't
I know where you're going to go here with this one.
Yeah, well, video and podcasts. Like if you're looking at a business now, particularly in the content space. Actually, I'm not going to limit this to the content space, and I'll do an example in a second. But converting content from written into video, hugely valuable. Yeah. And I want to give a couple of examples. Is that if you're, let's say, got an e-commerce site, like a video of the product with you walking through it and explaining it is always going to be better than just a slab of text that says features.
Agreed.
So, yeah, in e-commerce, huge. I can't believe not enough sites are doing this. We need more video in this space. We really do. And then in a content business as it is itself these days, I mean, you only have to look to the explosion of YouTube and to how it's being used as a search engine to really understand, or hang on, people prefer watching a video on things. It's much easier to get through, especially for technical subjects.
Yeah, I mean, having to read something that you just can't like easily read scientific wise and stuff about a certain product, it's just tell it to me straight in a quick 1 minute video.
Can you imagine reading this podcast episode? This is 27 minutes. This would be the worst blog post ever.
It would be. It would be.
Yeah. So like they're the three kind of super low hanging fruit. And then the next one I really look at is pixels. So, I mean, I'm not going to go too deeply into what this is, but I truly believe that remarketing is the most valuable segment of traffic every business owns. Now, as a quick overview, remarketing is when someone has been on your site already before, and then we show them an ad based on a pixel we drop on them. Now, if you're ever looking for an example of this, this is where I'm talking about that if you've maybe been on a website and then all of a sudden all over the internet you see that website or ads or products from that website, they kind of follow you around the internet, they stalk you a little bit. Now, regardless of how you feel about that type of behavior, it is proven to be one of the most profitable segments. So that's something I really look for in my little hit list as well.
What a hit list. Seriously, that's so good. So you got pixels, which you just talked about, page speed, mobile, and going visual as in video and audio. Like, I have to wholeheartedly agree with you that like we're getting lazier and lazier. We don't even want to use our thumbs anymore when they're right there next to the screen on our mobile phone. We just want to hit one button and just record our voice and send it to our mates, right? It's like we're getting that lazy. And only because technology is going that way. So why would you want to read anything anymore?
I still do enjoy a book from time to time, but I must admit, I'm certainly in that camp as well.
Yeah.
But Jared, I'll kick it over to you from here. Like, what's on your list here? Like, I've done a little marketing breakdown. Is there anything that fits in this category you'd like to add?
Yeah, so a lot of what you're talking about in SEO is making sure your website's mobile friendly and the page speed and stuff like that. But with growing a site, I feel that SEO is, and had this discussion with some friends again this morning, that SEO is like is going to be so important moving forwards. A lot of people are having trouble with not getting the best return on their investments from marketing on or spending ad spend on certain platforms. So a lot of
Sorry, I got a bit of a cough there. I hope I didn't interfere with the episode.
Yeah. Yep. I was going to say something really bad then, but I'm glad I didn't on air. So anyway, Facebook's been fun for a lot of people lately. And so a lot of people, I feel they're going to be spending some serious cash in SEO. And I think that's a place where every business can level up and add more value to their business by investing in SEO, by getting more links, inbound links, outbound links, like you said, page speed, and removing, like I said before, pruning that site of code that doesn't need to be there to make it run faster. I think that's a massive value add. There is one thing that I do want to add, Charlie, before we sort of close this out, is that, and this is a low-hanging fruit, is that when you buy a website and you want to add value to it, the best way to go about the low-hanging fruit is looking at the list. And what I mean by list is how many people are on the email list and how often is that email list being contacted? Like how warm is that list? And also on the social media channels, how many people do they have there? How often are they posting? And how warm is that audience? And then that is such a low-hanging fruit that you could add so much value when you first take over the business by putting out really good offers and really good sales towards that list. You could say, hey, you could mention that you're a new owner and things are going to change around here, new sheriff in town, and for a good reason. And then you could start, slowly warming them up more and more and more, and put some really good offers in and make a whole bunch of money that way through what's already there. And I think that's a great way to re-engage with a list, an audience on the socials, and build some really good trust, credibility, and become much more of an authority than what that website had been from the previous owner, and add massive value that way, which creates social proof too.
I'm gutted, Jared. Do you know why I'm gutted?
Because you didn't get that one?
I was the last one on my list.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But do you know what? I mean, at least we're in synergy here and agreement.
Yes.
But I think this is probably the number one for me. And I'm sure it's huge from your point of view as well. But if I spoke to a seller and let's say they've got, a list of 10,000 and they're not making any money from it, or they're not sending emails, or they haven't been putting any effort into it, that is probably your lowest hanging fruit. That is probably your biggest opportunity for value add that will result in an ROI.
Yeah, and it's crazy that people that have an existing website or existing business that we sometimes just can't, we're so embedded in it, or we're just so over it, or we're not spending enough time running it, which is what a lot of people are doing that are selling these businesses, is that we just don't see what's right in front of us. And that's that low-hanging fruit, right? Like, grab it.
Can I throw something in here?
Yeah, please.
This is something I think about weird topics. So when I say this is something I think about, I mean, no one's really going to be surprised. Probably least of all you, Jared. I try to think. I believe I'm a little bit of a contrarian, or I like to think about these topics anyway. Something I've noticed on repeat, right, is when people get into a business, any business, right, this doesn't apply just here, is they have biases of doing the things that they like to do. Which, I mean, this isn't groundbreaking yet, is it?
No, that's
Okay.
right.
This
Or things that people are comfortable in doing.
Yeah, and one of the things that very few business owners sign up for, or they look forward to, is sending emails. Right? So it's like, unless you're a copywriter or a content maker and you really, really enjoy interacting with an email list in some form, it's something that gets pushed to the absolute back of the pile because it's a skill in itself. And I really think this is something that gets neglected for a few reasons. Is one, they don't know how to do it. So when they do it, they don't get a great result from it. And then they, again, think, well, this isn't worth my time. Number two is that apart from not knowing how to do it, is that it does require consistent resources to do well. This is not something you can do once. If you're going to interact with an email list, you've got to do it consistently and have things to say. And I think that kind of points into my point 3, is that let's say you do know how to do it, you've got the time. It does take effort to understand what to put into these emails and how to stay on top of things to produce revenue. So when you start stacking up these hurdles, it's very easy to say, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to focus on SEO. Or, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go and work on this instead. It's easy to neglect.
Yeah. And I agree. It is easy to neglect, and it's a shame as well, because if you go away and put a whole lot of time into SEO, you could maybe spend less time in the email marketing and will get a better result anyway. And when you look at it from a timeline perspective, I believe it's a shame.
Huge shame. Or our opportunity.
Yes, exactly. Right. Let's look for value and opportunities. And guys, I hope, is there anything you want to add to this, Charlie? I think we've done had a really good nudge at this, and I'm sure maybe we do another podcast, outlining some more things in the future. But I feel like we did good.
I feel like we've nailed this so far. Certainly some deeper ones we could go into, but perhaps future episodes.
Yes, exactly. So guys, and thank you so much for jumping on, Charlie. Where can everybody find you?
Best place to find me is in your community. That's where I'm spending a lot of my time more lately. But if you would like to check out my website, it's charleyvalher.com. I'm sure we'll put a link in the description somewhere.
Awesome. Thanks so much for jumping on, Charlie. Greatly appreciate having you on again. And for those of you guys who are listening and want some awesome resources on knowing, what sort of things you should be looking at before buying a website, like a due diligence framework, or my website evaluator tool, go to buyingonlinebusines.com/free resources and check out my resources there that you can grab for free. And I just want to say to everybody, thank you so much for listening. I do greatly appreciate your support and your love, and the reviews that I've been getting are so great. And for anybody who is listening right now, please go away and make sure you like, subscribe, and to also leave a review about what you like about the podcast, so I can ensure that we bring more of that to the show. Thanks, guys.